When the HOA bulldozed my dreams for a dog park, I vowed to transform my loss into rebellion. Who knew a skunk sanctuary could be the wildest act of defiance? As dawn broke with a cacophony that resembled an apocalyptic rock concert, thanks to those wretched bulldozers, I found myself in a surreal morning state, half awake and fully enraged. I woke up for this? I mumbled through my unruly chestnut hair, which was doing its best impersonation of a frightened porcupine. It was a perfect start to a day that promised to be as exhilarating as a trip to the dentist, sans anesthesia. My precious crops, the fruits of my labor and sweat, were being reduced to nothing more than mulch for a glorified dog run. While I could only dream of dazzling green fields and thriving vegetables, Karen Wilcox, my arch nemesis in crisp suits and pearls, strutted around like she had just been crowned the Queen of Dogtopia. "What's next?" I yelled at nobody in particular. "A disco floor for poodles?" I dropped my coffee and charged outside, ready to unleash my fury upon the universe. Stepping into the chaos, I was greeted not by the aromatic fragrances of nature or the sweet sounds of morning birds, but by the throaty roar of construction machinery, exorcising my dreams from this land. "Excuse me," I howled, arms waving with the finesse of a rabid octopus. "This is my farm, not the local canine spa. I did not sign up for this tail-wagging colossal farce." Flailing like an overly dramatic actor during an emotional monologue, I was aware that my protest offered all the dignity of a juggling act in a three-ring circus. But dignity had abandoned me the moment the bulldozer's metallic belly devoured my pumpkins whole. Who knew they were so voracious? As the dust settled ever so gently onto the remnants of my crops, my stubborn imagination began churning. What if, I pondered with a spark of mischievous inspiration, I create a skunk sanctuary right next door? The absurdity of my idea left me both outraged and oddly elated. Karen might have claimed my fields for her canine kingdom, but I wouldn't relent without a good laugh or two. After all, if she could orchestrate dog parks like she was staging a Broadway musical, I could just as easily summon my dear friend Ray Guthrie, the wildlife enthusiast and beard warrior extraordinaire. Who wouldn't love a skunk retreat? It was truly the epitome of sweet revenge. I wasted no time. Ray would be my co-conspirator in this ecological coup. I could picture it now. A sanctuary frolicking with striped critters, tiny little noses sniffing the grass, and the aroma of lovely skunk ambrosia wafting through the air, a scent that would surely send homeowners' pristine minds reeling. I imagined the official HOA newsletter filled with aghast commentary about the peculiar new neighbors and a side note from Karen, lamenting the beige disaster that now loomed in her meticulously curated visual landscape. It would be poetic. The thought brightened my haze of morning angst, with a laugh worthy of a Broadway number itself. Ray appeared at my side with that charming grin of his, ready to rally against the tyranny of our HOA overlords. As we gazed upon the bulldozer munching through my crops, he chuckled, pulling his wide-brimmed hat down in conspiratorial solidarity. "Well, that's a bold move by the HOA, Jess. Let's show them that skunks are the new noble steeds in the kingdom of suburban chic." His plaid shirt flapped dramatically with his every gesticulation as he chimed in with sarcastic quips that made me appreciate the absurdity of it all even more. They should really add smelly and proud to our community standards. Fueled by a blend of outrage and ridiculous enthusiasm, we set our plan into motion with the same vigor I usually reserved for actual farming. Together, we gathered materials, creating colorful, "Welcome to the Skunk Sanctuary" signs with doodles that would transform my land into a whimsical attraction, or as Ray fondly called it, the new social hotspot. The very idea of these creatures prancing around while hyper-caffeinated dog owners strolled their pooches past like they were in an art gallery was enough to bubble laughter out of me. And let's be honest, the thought of Karen trying to rally the troops against the scent of nature's own perfume was as spectacular as it was entertaining. As we began painting and constructing, I felt a rush of satisfaction, a momentary surge that sweetened my defeat. Skunks would not only reclaim what Karen had so unjustly stolen, but would assert a newfound sense of community that revolved around freedom from boring pretense and the tyranny of suburban control. The boldness felt electric. I turned to Ray. "Just think, while your precious pups are parading around in their designer leashes, the skunks will be planning a revolution." With laughter bubbling between us, it was no longer just a retaliation but a fortitude against the madness of entitlement. The sanctuary would rise triumphantly. We'd show those HOA overlords that a little skunk charm could bring a community to life, or chase it out entirely. What could possibly go wrong? With the sun casting a warm glow over what remained of my farm, now an unwelcome canvas for a canine utopia, I stood beside Ray with an excitement that bordered on foolishness. But who knew? The idea of turning my misfortune into a skunk sanctuary felt like a brilliant act of rebellion. Armed with paintbrushes and questionable artistic abilities, we began our transformation effort. "Let me remind you, Ray," I said with a grin. "This isn't just any sanctuary. It's a luxurious haven for our bold little stripy buddies." I could almost hear the laughter of the HOA board echoing in my mind, but their scoffs would turn to gasps when they caught sight of our plan taking shape. We adorned our sanctuary with bright colors that would confuse even the most entitled of dog owners. "Shouldn't it be beige?" I mocked, raising an eyebrow as I slapped on vivid strokes of green and gold. Ray countered with an exaggerated nod, painting a winking skunk cartoon beside our sign. "Oh, absolutely. Everything should match the serene and mundane theme of the HOA. The only pops of color allowed are those found on organic, gluten-free snack packages." We hooted with laughter as we brushed our strokes, each new splash of paint feeling like a small victory against the blandness forced upon us by Karen and her minions. As the sanctuary began to take shape, I imagined the spectacle. I pictured it bustling with life, skunks sniffing around and cavorting merrily as the dog owners, armed with their snooty little terriers, paraded by in horror. I could already hear the gasps and shudders that would ripple through the dog-walking crowd. "Would you like to sign a waiver, ma'am?" I'd grin, gesturing towards the sanctuary as if it were a five-star restaurant. "We have fresh skunk ambrosia and aromatic pheromones, all for your pup's sensory delight." Something about turning the tables on the pompous dog owners sent delightful shivers down my spine. Once the sign was proudly displayed, complete with glimmering stars and glitter glue that could only be described as a visual assault, we stepped back to admire our creation. It was equal parts ridiculous and fabulous, simply an affront to Karen's pristine mediation of the neighborhood. At that moment, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. "You know what they should do?" I mused. "Put skunks in the rules of HOA bylaws. The more skunks, the lower the property values." The sheer absurdity of it all tickled me, as I could only imagine the mounds of paperwork and hysterics that would ensue from Karen and her board of overseers nearly combusting from stress over pests. Before long, our joyful project was drawing an audience. Neighbors who had seemed indifferent while my crops were bulldozed now emerged from behind their picket fences, peering over with a mix of curiosity and confusion. "What do you guys think?" I shouted, waving my paint-splattered hand like a deranged game show host. "Come on down and experience the magic." Some chuckled, while others raised wary eyebrows. But Ray, ever the charmer, chimed in with his own witticisms to draw a small crowd. "Just think. Come see the delightful creatures that Karen wouldn't dare allow." I could see the sparks of rebellion in the eyes of my neighbors, songs of solidarity swirling through the breeze as they joined our oddball endeavor. Fueled by the contagious energy in the air, the sanctuary blossomed beyond our wildest designs. With the arrival of a small team of enthusiastic neighbors, we found ourselves negotiating the fine line between absurdity and revolution. Clad in mismatched garden gloves and armed with an arsenal of brightly colored paint, we decided that mere skunks wouldn't suffice. What about a whole cast of cumbrous creatures, as Ray affectionately dubbed them? A raccoon corner? A chipmunk cafe? Our unruly imagination sparked laughter louder than any HOA meeting ever could. I envisioned Karen's double-blink reaction when she caught wind of our burgeoning ecological zoo next door. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues that screamed, "We are not self-important beige like you, Karen," I felt invigorated. A sense of carefree defiance surged through me, with every brushstroke and giggle exchanged as we rallied against the oppressive reign of our HOA. If lavish dog parks meant sacrificing my farming dream, then let me revel in chaos with skunks and raccoons galore. I tucked a strand of my unruly hair behind my ear and regarded my neighbors as partners in crime, each equally enthusiastic about a community that thrived on the joy of unpredictability. "Come on," I shouted. "Let's give the skunks a welcome that will echo through the ages." Who knew that a sassy band of homeowners would turn into the unexpected champions of a skunk sanctuary movement? I could already feel Karen's meticulously coiffed hair stand on end at the thought of our madness. With each paint stroke, I felt the intoxicating mix of rebellion and solidarity envelop me. Like I was wielding a spatula instead of a paintbrush in revolution, a master chef in the kitchen of subversion. The long-standing oppression of the HOA was about to meet its match with our bustling sanctuary. Who'd have thought that a little ambition to reverse the tyranny would result in a motley gathering of neighborly solidarity, all sparked by the outrageous creation of a skunk sanctuary? Would the HOA survive the chaos we were brewing? As our skunk sanctuary took shape, whispers of the madness grew louder within our quaint community. More and more neighbors appeared out of the woodwork, some clutching garden tools and others brandishing snacks, as if we were hosting an unconventional potluck. I laughed maniacally at the irony rippling through our makeshift gathering. Here we were, neighbors who once turned a blind eye to my dwindling farm, now united by nothing less than the chaotic joy of celebrating skunks as royalty. "Hey, who brought the cheese puffs?" I blurted out to a stack of bewildered families who cautiously circled our colorful oasis of wildlife rebellion. With every hesitant footstep they took towards our skunk-orific creation, I could practically taste the tension eroding under the barrage of laughter. Comedic conversations soon erupted as one neighbor, a woman sporting a windbreaker 3 sizes larger than necessary, decided our sanctuary needed a theme song. "What about Eye of the Tiger? But we change it to Eye of the Skunk," she proudly declared, her eyes twinkling with mischief. Raucous laughter ensued, and I couldn't help but picture a feral skunk in a homemade cape, belting out a power ballad about taking back the night. It might have seemed ludicrous to anyone just passing by, but here, amid bubbling ideas and potentially anthemic skunk songs, I felt a camaraderie surging like hot cocoa on a winter's night. "Yes, and we can have a skunk mascot. Someone get on that!" I hollered, my heart swelling with untamed joy. Just when I thought the absurdity couldn't peak any higher, Ray revealed he had an old storage shed full of surplus garden decorations he thought might enhance our sanctuary. Before I could protest, he was off like a shot, only to return moments later, hauling a scrappy dinosaur sculpture that looked incredibly out of place among our wild aspirations. Laughter erupted as he plopped the green monstrosity at the entrance to the skunk sanctuary, completing our vibe of whimsical chaos. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced with flair, "welcome to the Jurassic Park of Skunktopia." And there it was, a rainbow-colored sign atop the ludicrous sculpture signifying to all, whether they liked it or not, that change was brewing in our little slice of suburban tyranny. Every stroke of paint, every giggle, and every unexpected turn made my heart race with glee. The idea of putting Karen's uptight rein to the test fueled my motivation. I imagined her striding over, resurrecting that look of disapproval mixed with disbelief. "What are you doing?" she'd probably stammer, finger twiddling with urgency like an excited orchestra conductor. "This is a neighborhood. This isn't a skunk convention." But let's be honest, what better way to combat the dog park debacle? My glorious creation was ripping apart her tightly wound world, and the delicious taste of rebellion was intoxicating. With each tinge of paint and dash of insane creativity, we were redefining what living in our community could look like. The final touches on our wild exhibition came when a few brave souls suggested we host an inaugural skunk parade. "Let's arm ourselves with the most colorful banners, distracting Charlie from his endless barking," someone said, thrusting a piece of neon fabric into the air like a battle flag. "Imagine it! Skunks! Costumes! Maybe even a couple of dogs joined in wrangling up the riffraff." I could practically see Karen sprinting towards us, her pearls trembling with agitation and outrage. I could feel laughter bubbling in my stomach at the thought of her confrontational spouting, all while the rest of our eclectic band swayed in excitement. With every person drawn to our cause, murmurings began to shift from skeptical side-eye glances to enthusiastic headlines. "The HOA can't stop us," we joked amidst the laughter, throwing ideas into the air and watching as they led new conversations. We were all benefiting from this absurd situation, morphing our frustrations into celebrations of individuality and chaos. Shouldn't community thrive on festivities where outrace skunks dazzled in neon garb while sporting tiny hats and mocktails? We were confronting the redundancy of a dog park with the vibrant possibilities of skunk-driven hilarity. It seemed radical to laugh in the face of entitlement while drawing others into our grooves of unconventionality, and I welcomed each new voice like protests against the mundane, to a tune that echoed through every paint stroke and lingering chuckle. As the evening rolled in, glowing, twinkling fairy lights hung above, turning our sanctuary into a glittering fantasy land full of unanticipated laughter. Our sanctuary proved that not only could rebellion triumph over the mundane, but also pave the way for absurd alliances and natural camaraderie. And I, for one, couldn't wait to see the mighty HOA's reaction. The pompous Karen, standing aghast as she surveyed her carefully manicured community, turned into a riot of whimsy and delight. My heart raced as I imagined the scene, a combined force of my more than willing neighbors proudly marching their dogs past our skunk sanctuary. Would they embrace this riotous celebration of nature, or would it send them spiraling into bureaucratic madness? I leaned into the chaotic air and grinned. The ultimate showdown was approaching. As Saturday dawned in rich hues of orange and pink, I woke up feeling like a kid on the brink of Christmas, sans the logic and responsibility of adulthood. Today was the big day. The inaugural skunk parade was poised to unfold under a sky that appeared to be in on the joke. Coffee in hand and still donning my faded, way too comfortable overalls, I whipped open the window to let the crisp morning air seep in. The smell of impending chaos, along with the faint aroma of Ray's burnt toast wafting from next door, filled my nostrils with a sense of purpose. "Time to unleash the skunks!" I shouted, forgetting entirely to rein in my fervor. The animals seemed to perch in anticipation, their little noses twitching in a show of delight, as if they understood the grandness of our audacious plan. By mid-morning, our little sanctuary had morphed into a full-blown festival of fur and faux pas. Neighbors trickled in from every corner, wielding colorful banners and homemade skunk costumes that could humble even the most fervent Halloween enthusiast. I stood flabbergasted, watching as one child, whose parents had clearly lost track of time and imagination, donned a skunk suit full of silver sequins. "Look, Mom, I'm a disco skunk!" he squealed, blissfully twirling in full groove mode. I couldn't help but picture the horror on Karen's face if she stumbled upon this glittering spectacle of rebellion, a vision sure to spark laughter and disbelief across the neighborhood. Ray emerged wearing a t-shirt emblazoned with the slogan, "Honk if you love skunks," which quite frankly channeled every bit of energy needed to launch our event. "Jesse, if we can't rattle Karen's pearls today, then we must simply be doing life wrong," he bellowed with contagious energy, leading the charge to set up a sound system that would either drown out the HOA's disapproval or serve as a soundtrack to our impending calamity. The faint beat of Eye of the Skunk trembled through the air as Ray cranked up the volume. If there was ever a situation that required a soundtrack of absurdity, today was it. I clapped my hands, envisioning the hilarity of our skunky procession parading down Main Street, claiming our right to humorous resistance against entitlement, one glittery tale at a time. As the minutes ticked by, spectators started gathering, judging this chaotic carnival with equal parts skepticism and curiosity. There were moments where I could feel the energy in the air shift as the initial disapproval blurred into mild amusement. Even the notorious Mrs. Wagglesworth from 2 houses down, who once bellowed about the sanctity of mulched flower beds, ultimately cracked a smile that could rival the sun breaking through a rainstorm. "Look," I pointed dramatically toward the revelation of the electrifying cadre of sparkling skunks and giddy children. "Even she's on board. It's chaos, but it's our chaos. Let the skunks be free." Cheers erupted like cannon fire, zapping any doubts we had about today's agenda. But just as the parade filled with cheerful spectators was ready to commence, there she was, Karen, appearing at the end of the road with all the dignity of a peacock, puffed up and poised for battle, draped in what was either an ailing floral ensemble or a lasagna she fashioned into a dress. "What in all that's sacred is happening here?" she cried, her perfectly coiffed hair quivering with indignation. I could practically hear the clattering of her pearls as the crowd bristled, glancing from her disapproving glare to the snazzy banners announcing our theme of freedom and fur. "Oh, Karen, sweet responsive diva of the HOA, if only you knew what was about to unfold." In a moment of pure, unfiltered rebellion, I stepped forward, brandishing my skunk battle flag, the colorful banner we had crafted just yesterday amid laughs, snickers, and some cringes. "It's a celebration of individuality, Karen. In case you haven't noticed, dogs are not the only pets worthy of honor." My heart raced as I faced down the formidable HOA leader. Her expression morphed from irritation to utter disbelief, and I nearly expected a puff of smoke to burst forth behind her. "I can't believe you'd clutter the community with such nonsense," she huffed, but the crescendo of laughter erupting from the crowd signaled otherwise. They were hungry for this outlandish declaration, a parable of reclamation served with a side of hilarity. Before she could retort, the parade commenced. A gaggle of exuberant children donned in DIY costumes burst forth with the energy of 100 caffeinated squirrels, followed closely by our furry companions wearing colorful neckerchiefs. No sequin missed its target, even bounding skunks wrapped in tulle. I cackled in delight. The children waved banners embroidered with slogans like "Skunks rule, dogs drool, and freedom to frolic," as they followed behind a small float bedecked with garden gnomes holding mini flags. Despite the lurking dread of Karen's disapproval punctuating the scene like an unwelcome judge at a spelling bee, the joy anchored itself resolutely in our magnificent rebellion. The absurdity of it all blossomed like flowers racing toward daylight amidst the confines of a dog park, and amidst the laughter and camaraderie, I wondered if our glorious sanctification of the underappreciated skunk would mark a turning point in our neighborhood's absurdity-driven narrative. Would Karen finally come to accept a community bursting with individuality, or would she defiantly march back to a dog park still adorned with unwelcome signs? Only time would tell, but with every step of our parade, the skunk revolution surged forward. As our raucous procession rolled down Main Street, I couldn't help but feel a giddy thrill start at my toes and electrify every hair on my head. I might as well have been riding atop a float in a Mardi Gras parade, complete with glitter and sheer unadulterated joy. The cacophony of laughter, barking, and dare I say, some wild skunk sounds filled the air, transforming our ordinary street into a carnival of mischief. As I caught the gleam of glitter from Skunk Jr., the disco-tastic child twirling in sparkles, a thought struck me like lightning. This was what community meant, and Karen had unwittingly helped cultivate it. To skunks and the spirit of delight, I hollered, throwing my hands up in celebration. The crowd roared in response, and for a moment the chaos that had been unleashed felt absolutely divine. The absurdity hit peak levels as we passed the local coffee shop. Its usual aroma of roasted beans, while still delicious, now mingled with the unmistakable hint of skunky cuteness. Coffee sippers gazed wide-eyed from the patio, mouths agape, as our mismatched brigade exploded into their realm, fully armed with our mission of whimsical protest. I could see the barista, a jovial man named Dave, straining to suppress laughter while serving a latte that was definitely missing its artistic foam art. "I'll take a skunk special!" someone yelled in jest, and thus the brunch crowd's laughter erupted into a full-blown echo. It was almost poetic, the symphony of unexpected joy colliding against the rigid walls of the neighborhood's pompous demeanor, leaving Karen, poor soul, standing at the edge in sheer disbelief. Just then my mischievous plan began to sprout more tentacles of chaos. Perhaps it was time for a grand opportunity to rattle the pearls. Something brightened my spirit. It was the idea of bringing Karen into the fold of our ensemble, casting her as reluctant queen amidst all the absurdity. Before fully grasping my thoughts, I pivoted and headed toward her, fueled by a heady dose of courage paired with slightly unhinged humor. "Hey, Karen," I called with the saccharine cheeriness usually reserved for one's annoying aunt. "Care to join us in our celebration of tails, tiny noses, and boundless community spirit?" I witnessed her expression dance from flabbergasted to outright aghast, like a prize turkey stranded in front of the Thanksgiving oven. Unlike a deer caught in headlights, Karen regained her composure quickly, straightening her floral dress, as if to ward off whatever chaotic spirits threatened her pristine ensemble. "Jessie Lane, this is absolutely reprehensible," she declared, as her eyebrows shot up like two startled birds. The glitter brigade was unfazed, and I felt the warm buzz of laughter swell within the crowd, ready to take on the titan of HOA tyranny. I turned back to my crew, realizing that what I proposed was ludicrously audacious, but the skunk revolution demanded no less. "Hey everyone, how about we make this even more fun? Let's encircle Karen and share our loving recounts of the values of skunks." With an invigorated cheer, we began to encircle her, smiling and clutching our hearts like overly dramatic thespians in a pizza commercial, begging her to embrace the fun. "Come on, Karen, let's talk about the wholesome values of skunks. They're all about independence and resilience, even if you get the occasional stink bomb explosion," I announced, basking in the delightful absurdity of the moment. The kids, sensing the moment was ripe for absurd shenanigans, began chanting improvised skunk mantras in surprisingly catchy rhythms that reminded me of a guilty pleasure pop song. Karen gaped at us like we were a circus act gone rogue, sashaying fully into her rehearsed villainy while I compiled imaginary points against her tyrannical reign. But just as I relished the audacity of parlaying chaos into a dynamic showdown, another wave of delightful distractions swept through the crowd like a gust of wind. Raymond, ever the opportunist, wheeled out a cart adorned with soda bottles, each labeled with zany names like Skunk Spray and Funky Fizz. "Quench your thirst while you advocate for democracy. Who wants a soda?" he called out, grinning from ear to ear beneath that iconic wide-brimmed hat. I could hardly breathe from laughter as I watched him pass out those overly enthusiastic concoctions to wide-eyed children and adults alike. "Including you, Karen. You know you'd love a Funky Fizz," he added cheekily, crossing long-held boundaries with brazen charm. In moments like these, I realized that living amidst the absurdity could win hearts and open eyes, proving that humor might just be an antidote to entitlement. The sight of our eclectic band, blending insatiable cheers with skunky slogans, brought forth a glimmer of unpredictability, where the chains of conformity were pulled apart with every burst of laughter. My heart raced as Karen's once impervious front began to crack, revealing the slightest hint of bemusement mingling with irritation. Perhaps somewhere beneath the layers of pearls and tailored suits, she was human too. Could there be a chance for compromise, a wisp of connection? Or would she remain transfixed, torn between her disdain for chaos and the childlike wonder bounding beneath her nose? Whatever that answer may be, one thing was certain. Today had become the most hysterically glorious challenge to her reign imaginable. As I stood there, enchanted by the collective jubilation, I knew we had entered a pivotal moment, one that could tip the delicate balance in favor of our joyful rebellion. Would laughter and solidarity finally soften Karen's heart or serve as a blueprint for further clashes? Only time could tell, but I was more than ready for whatever came next. As the celebration grew in chaotic grandeur, I spotted a telltale flicker in Karen's eyes, a mix of incredulity and something softer, perhaps even a trace of jealousy. It was the flickering of an idea tentatively blooming, and I knew I couldn't let this one chance slip through my fingers like so many grains of dirt from my farming hands. "Hey, Karen!" I shouted over the jubilant chants of "Skunks for everyone" swirling around us. "Why don't you come and join us at our skunk sanctuary? I guarantee a meet and greet that'll knock those pearls right off your neck." The crowd erupted in laughter, and from the corner of my eye, I could see Raymond about to roll over with mirth at my audacity. In a tight spot like this, I had to get creative, and the sanctuary was more than just a last-minute distraction. It was my ultimate gambit to showcase the beauty of these misunderstood critters. Maybe, just maybe, I could convince her that community spirit smelled far sweeter than any skunk could. However, Karen was not one to concede her throne without a fight. "Oh no, not Karen Wilcox. I will not be dragged into your absurd game, Jessie Lane," she huffed, straightening her meticulously styled hair as if to physically shield herself from the madness surrounding her. But the gleam in her eye had deepened, revealing an unmistakable flicker of curiosity. "Skunks? Really? What's next? A raccoon rave?" With every word, it felt as if she was warring against both herself and her typically pristine reputation. Meanwhile, the crowd fueled my relentless momentum, raising their wisecracks and cheers until they reached a crescendo of absurdity that filled the air like an exhilarating burst of color. I chuckled quietly to myself. If I had created a movement sturdy enough to make the embodiment of HOA tyranny waver, then the rest was practically history in the making. Ray, sporting an expression that could only be described as delighted chaos, interjected at just the right moment. "Karen, you'd be a hit. Just think how great you'd look in one of our custom skunk enthusiast t-shirts. They're a lovely shade of skunk gray." He flashed a grin as wide as his creativity could stretch. The sheer image of Karen, all primped and pedicured, rocking a faded skunk t-shirt sent the crowd into fits of laughter, and I could see Karen's lips twitching ever so slightly as she fought a smile. "Oh, my friends," I thought, "isn't this irony the sweetest kind of victory?" It turns out, enduring the tirades of the HOA president had birthed a gathering of voices, of people who rattled the very cages of conformity she had enforced with polite tyranny. Would she unleash her inner skunk lover, or retreat back into her fortress of pearls and tailored suits? I approached her with caution, like one would when inching toward a potentially agitated feline. "Look, Karen, it's just a little fun. We celebrate the quirks of our community here, not elevate them to the grand heights of a kingdom only you preside over. Don't you want to relive your rebellious youth?" My voice dripped with exaggerated sweetness, teasing her with temptation while her expression wavered between horror and intrigue. The very thought of Karen letting loose was a sight far more delectable than anything else I could imagine. The atmosphere crackled with shared hopes as onlookers leaned forward, hungry for the next twist in our bizarre escapade. Would our upscale queen of control learn to embrace the untamed spirit of our neighborhood? Or would she remain locked in her stuffy castle of no fun allowed? The crowd now grew restless, the energy shifting like a surfacing tidal wave. "You won't regret it," came the chants, and I could hear the infectious vibe ripple through the air. "It'll be a skunk-tacular time." Seconds felt like hours as I stared into the depths of her steely blue eyes, hoping I could find even a sliver of the human beneath the pristine facade. The laughter around us was no longer directed solely at her, but had morphed into a jovial call to action, one that united us, the League of Skunk enthusiasts against the reign of property management absurdity. "Come on, Karen. It's about community. You wouldn't want to miss out on the best day of our lives, would you?" I said, spurring her along with a push of effervescent encouragement. In a moment that felt like it could ignite 1,000 YouTube montages of heartwarming reactions, I witnessed the transformation manifesting before my eyes. Karen's lips finally surrendered to the creeping smile, cracking the barriers of her tightly wound demeanor. "All right, Jessie," she purred reluctantly with more resolve than I'd ever seen in her. "Lead the way gently. I draw the line at any skunky encounters." The crowd erupted in cheers as I beamed with triumphant glee, rearranging the dynamics of class warfare with sheer delight. I knew there was a kernel of genuine fascination buried deep within her polished surface, and today was my opportunity to uncover it. Who knows? I thought with a wicked grin, maybe by the end of our transformation, I could convince her that skunks were the guiding light to her walled-off heart. As we began to march towards the sanctuary, a new thrill surged through me. Would this be the moment when the rivulets of discrimination and entitlement washed away? Would Karen discover the beauty of embracing the quirky side of life? My heart raced. I glanced at Ray, who was already preparing the welcome committee of skunks for our royal guest. "You know, Ray," I muttered, "if she gets too close to one of those little stink bombs, I'll never let her live it down." And with that, we charged forward, already carrying the audacity of our skunk-tastic intrigue into an unknown victory, unsure of whether we'd succeed or simply bumble our way into another round of HOA drama. Whatever the outcome, I was ready to relish this delightful absurdity of life, while armed with nothing but laughter and a hint of skunk spray. Would the skunks accept Karen as their unexpected queen, or had I just opened a can of fragrant chaos? As we traipsed toward the skunk sanctuary, my earlier trepidations faded like the crisp morning fog, replaced by palpable excitement. The crowd, now vocally invested in this chaotic spectacle, followed closely behind, reveling in the thrill of possible transformation. I could hear the whispers of, "Do you think she'll really go through with it? And what if one of them sprays her?" bouncing around like confetti in a summer wind. Each footfall brought with it an electrifying promise of imminent mischief. I shot a glance at Karen, who still held her pristine composure, though her elegantly pressed suit suddenly appeared as if it was drawn into the swirling vortex of absurdity around us. What a glorious day for rebellion against the gilded tyranny of the HOA. Today was going to be one for the history books. Ray, ever the instigator of wild ideas, signaled me over. "Hey, Jesse, what do you think Karen should wear to the grand opening?" His grin was infectious, and even through the tension it felt like an invitation to the silliness that was about to unfold. As he rifled through a pile of t-shirts, I could barely contain my laughter. Each shirt displayed some brilliantly cheeky tagline, "I'm just skunked up," and "Let's get this stink started." Oh, the magnificent irony of it all. "Let's see what colors would do well with your skin tone, Karen," I quipped, nudging her softly. Her eyes narrowed adorably, revealing an ever-growing curiosity, like a reluctant cat peering over the edge of a cozy blanket. "Oh, no you don't, Jessie," she retorted, but I could tell from the slightest quiver at the corners of her mouth that she wasn't entirely resistant to our little rally. We finally reached the sanctuary, a tranquil haven for skunks, lush, with wildflowers and soft grass, nestled lovingly in the arms of old oak trees. To my utter delight, the sanctuary looked absolutely enchanting in the late afternoon sunlight. As I gestured towards the little hideaway, I felt my heart swell with pride. This was not just about the embrace of nature, it was about reclaiming laughter, community spirit, and perhaps breaking through the wallpaper of Karen's regimented world. Welcome to Skunktopia, where peace and petals blossom, and skunks reign supreme. The crowd erupted into roars of laughter, their spirits suspended in the absurdity of the moment with me. Karen hesitated as we stood at the entrance, her stiff demeanor wavering as she scanned the scene, miniature skunks meandering about, seemingly unaware they were about to meet a dignified HOA president. "Are you sure they don't bite?" Karen asked, a playful tremor in her voice. "Are you worried, Karen?" I shot back, adopting an exaggerated sass. "Do I need to remind you that fear only stinks up the place?" At this, the laughter around us swelled tenfold, and I watched as the tension eased further away from her shoulders. With one exaggerated sigh and a roll of her eyes, Karen took a step toward the entrance. The moment couldn't have felt more surreal or historical. The embodiment of HOA oppression marching into a realm of cluttered joy. It was a delightful image, women in pearls and impeccably ironed blouses uniting within a sanctuary of adorable skunks. "Okay, fine," she conceded dramatically, "but if one of these wretched creatures chooses to deploy their stink bomb, I am holding you personally responsible." The crowd erupted again, and I couldn't contain my delighted cackle. This was action I never knew I desperately craved. As we began our exploration of the sanctuary, I narrated the daily lives of skunks as if I were leading a Broadway production, complete with high drama and exaggerated flair. And here we have Cardi B, our resident diva who never fails to strike a pose. I gestured toward a small skunk who was busy digging a hole in the earth. And over there is Stinky Pete, our award-winning garden designer. I modeled an overly enthusiastic presentation, and much to my amazement, Karen began to chuckle, which sounded as foreign and wonderful as a cat purring. With her genteel laughter mingling with the joyous chaos around us, it became painfully clear how contagious good humor could be, capable of melting even the frostiest of hearts. Before long, the rats of HOA hierarchy were forgotten, replaced instead by a fellowship brought together by skunks and laughter. The crowd cheered every time a skunk waddled close to Karen, and I couldn't help but think how delightful it would be to capitalize on this newfound kinship in the future. You know, Karen, I teased, you could always start an entire line of skunk-inspired merchandise. Karen's skunky fashion, all the rage. The crowd howled with laughter, as I could see the playful flicker of ambition ignite in her cerulean eyes. Perhaps I had managed to turn this formidable opponent into an unexpected ally. In a brilliant flash, it occurred to me that I had not just created a sanctuary for skunks. I'd ignited a rebellion filled with laughter, bursting through the walls of community suppression. As the sun began to set, casting golden hues over our jubilant gathering, I could feel a sense of camaraderie wash over us like a fresh spring breeze. A mixture of relief and joy filled the air, mingling with the earthy aroma of skunk mischief. You know, I addressed the crowd, full of enthusiasm, today isn't just about saving my farm or presenting a case for misunderstood creatures. It's about creating a neighborhood where we can thrive with the oddities that connect us. Cheers erupted around me, and at that moment, as laughter echoed through the sanctuary, I could feel a victory as solid as the earth beneath my worn-out boots. As Karen finally relented, flashing a mischievous smile, I thought to myself that perhaps, just perhaps, we had formed an unbreakable alliance, one with the absurdity of a skunk sanctuary firmly at its core. Whether the dogs might be wary or simply perplexed by the change in scenery mattered not. On this day, we, as a community, stood united against the trials of our HOA and embraced the chaotic joy life often had to offer. Would we seek out the quirky joys of our neighborhood together, or would the HOA storm back in like a dog chasing its own tail?